Petersburg and other places. As it turns out, Bodrum, Turkey, which is a little town, not and so little any longer, but on the coast of the Aegean Sea. In fact, I was telling earlier that I really hope to show you the sea also as part of the background, but then the light is hitting in the wrong way, so you would see the sea, but not my face.
Okay, Aegean Sea would have been lovely to see the Aegean Sea.
I think you might have preferred the sea, but somehow human beings want to see a face when there's a conversation.
Oh, but still your background is beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We envy him because it's raining here.
It's raining.
Yes.
Or is it the season or something? Is it?
Actually,
it is the ending session.
It's the end of the season, but unseasonal rains. The end of the season. We're all cooped up in our studies, each one inside. And the lockdown is not fully lifted.
Well, you know, of course, this is the end of the summer here.
Yeah.
And on top of that, this is an area where during this rather long period, there is hardly ever any rain. Now, clouds began to come. In fact, you know, I was a little concerned because we were having some people for dinner tonight, and you know, we don't have sufficient space indoors. It's a summer home, so we generally eat outdoors. But if it were to rain, then it would have been a social disaster, or if not a disaster, a difficult situation, you see. But fortunately, you know, the clouds cleared up and the sun began to shine. And I understand that we will not have anything this evening, so we will be able to entertain our friends outdoors. And then
likely
tomorrow.
To get cold now, right?
Pardon
likely
me?
to get colder now. Likely to get cold.
Yeah, but you know, it's not particularly cold yet. It's cooling off, but you know, like today it's about 26 degrees, which is very, very pleasant, you know. I mean, you know, during the summer, we average 29, 30, 31 at the height of the day. And it doesn't go down very much at night. This is sort of by the sea, so it doesn't go down very much. But now we're down to 26.
Aruna is also from the coastal area. Aruna is from the coastal area.
Yes.
Aruna.
Yeah, he's talking about me.
Yeah, all right.
Belongs to a coastal area.
Yes.
All right.
Now, Bombay is also coastal, but then Bombay is such a big, huge metropolis that we wouldn't dream of going to a coast. It's not so interesting.
Well, of course, you know, Mumbai is such a big place, you know.
Yes, 35 million of us.
My God, you know, how many
city?
Well, if you rank them like with countries, you know, Mumbai would be much bigger than many countries in the world. It would be in the first 50 probably.
We have bigger populations than small European countries.
Yes. Even, you know, middle-sized European countries. I mean, you know, think about, you know, the Czech Republic or Slovakia or Croatia, and I mean, these are all, these are, I mean, Croatia, I think, is in fact very small, like 5 or 6 million. Serbia is a little bigger, I mean, maybe 20 million, but, you know, still, you know, next to Mumbai, these are small places. I mean,
yeah, I'm here only. I joined because I started meeting somewhere only. So I was doing some work behind the curtain. Unni ma'am, I'm just trying to call you. Just pick up my call or some issue.
Calling me?
Yes.
Neha, are you here? Neha, can you hear me, Neha? Neha, can you hear me?
Neha, you can unmute yourself now.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay.
You just change your name, Neha WPC, then we can so people.
Sir, how do I do it?
You just go.
Ya 2-3 dakika içinde başlayacak Fatoş. Evet.
Söyledim Gülsen'in masasında.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're about to start, or do we have a few more minutes?
We'll start, sir, within 2-3 minutes.
When?
2-3 minutes, sir.
All right, 2 or 3 minutes.
Guests are coming.
All right.
Yes, we will start. Just give us 2-3 minutes.
All right.
We need to begin. We need to begin.
So we will begin now. The minister will join us very shortly. And because is busy some other events, so we'll begin now, and then meanwhile we can start with this, and then later we can come back to his speech. So now I ask Neha to begin with your part. Neha, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, shall I start?
Yeah,
Yes,
please
yes.
welcome our guest.
I lost.
So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're watching us from. On behalf of the Water Policy Center, it gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers and participants who have joined this session. We are glad that you could join us today at the Water Policy Center's COVID-19 Dialogue. Today is the second and the final day of the dialogue, which was inaugurated on 24th September 2020 by Nobel Peace Laureate Professor Mohammad Yunus, founder of Grameen Bank, Dhaka, and Professor KVS Sarma and other dignitaries. This is the last session of the dialogue, and to moderate this valedictory session, we have Mr. Rao Sahib Bavaskar with us today. It is my great pleasure to introduce him. Mr. Rao Sahib Bavaskar is founder and director of Venu Ganga Foundation's Water Policy Center, India, where he works on water governance and water security. He also holds a position of assistant professor in politics and international relations at NES Ratnam College, Mumbai, affiliated to the Mumbai University. He has been teaching international relations for more than 10 years in various prestigious colleges in the city. Apart from this, Mr. Bavaskar is the co-founder of Mumbai School of Thought, a Mumbai-based foreign policy forum, and the co-founder of the Venu Ganga Foundation. He had been awarded ICSSR Doctoral Fellowship in the years 2013 to 2015 to research on the BRICS and global power shift at the University of Mumbai. He writes on global governance, BRICS, and power shift, China's global strategy, and the water security and governance. Without extending further, let me request Mr. Rao Sahib Bavaskar to take charge of the session.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you for this wonderful introduction of mine. And now I formally welcome these speakers and our guest for the validation. And as Neha mentioned, this was 2 days event where we discussed various aspects of the COVID-19, its impact and responses. And we had around 75 speakers from 27 countries. And the speakers have touched the diverse aspect of the issue. On behalf of the Water Policy Center, the UNO Center Dhaka, the NES Ratnam College, the Venu Ganga Foundation, and the Mumbai School of Thought, I welcome you all in this validity session of this 2-day dialogue on COVID-19. And without taking time, let me introduce our special guest, who is Professor Ilter Turan, who will be giving a special address in this session. Professor Ilter Turan is a currently eminent professor of political science at the Bilgi University, Istanbul, Turkey. He has served as the president of his university from 1998 to 2001. Professor Turan is the past president of International Political Science Association, which is very much known in the area of political science and international relations, and the past president of Turkish Political Science Association. He served on the board of several foundations and corporations. He is widely published in English and Turkish on comparative politics, Turkish politics, and foreign policy. His latest book, Turkey's Difficult Journey to Democracy, was published by the Oxford University Press in April 2015. He writes a weekly column in the Economic Daily and Economic Daily Dunia, and is frequent commentator on media. I warmly welcome Professor Turan to deliver his special address to us and take this opportunity to thank him for having accepted our invitation so graciously. Professor Turan, this session is to you now.
Well, thank you very much. Let me begin by saying that it is a privilege for me and an honor for me to have this opportunity to talk with you. You have organized a very timely conference, and I'm sure a lot of wisdom permeated through the meetings. Unfortunately, I was not able to follow them, but I know that it is a very, very active group. And let me just, as a side note, add that I'm also interested in politics of water. And so, since many of you are interested in water questions, let me add one little dimension to the things I have done. I served as an advisor to a scientific committee to the Turkish Ministry of Agriculture and Forests in the construction of Ilısu Dam, which has recently been completed. In fact, it is still in the process of being filled up. But having said that, let us move to what I'm going to be talking about today. And that is about COVID and the world. And I actually chose to entitle my presentation, "Are we going to experience revolutionary changes?" Because, you know, the pandemic took the entire world by surprise. Although we had encountered pandemics before, none of them spread so quickly and to so many corners of the world. Even, you know, the previous pandemics that all of us may remember from our limited lifetime, like the SARS and the Ebola crisis, were sort of confined to specific areas, specific continents, but you know, COVID seems to be a universal phenomenon. It has affected many people. Governments have had to adopt extensive and comprehensive measures, and they have been forced to deviate from their usual norms of behavior, their ideas, ideologies, and practices. But before moving on, I would like to ask a practical question. Uh, can they can we call the pandemic a development that resembles in many ways a revolution? Now, when we say revolution, we sort of think of people fighting the soldiers or police officers in the streets, sometimes in earlier history, hangings and killing people. Nothing of the sort has happened, but you know, the way we think of revolutions, they often change life in a society in an irreversible way. So the question is, has the COVID changed the world, or is it changing the world in an irreversible way? Before answering this question and saying yes or no to it, let me draw your attention to a by now dated article by Robert Darnton entitled, "What was revolutionary about the French Revolution?" And in this masterpiece, Darnton argues that almost everything that was done after the French Revolution, or during and after the Revolution, had its antecedents before the Revolution ever took place. But the Revolution was like a dam breaking loose, and it opened up a sense of boundless possibility. Many people experimented with many things. They even tried to render the calendar into a decimal system, and then it didn't work. But everyone had ideas they tried when the dam, so to speak, broke loose. I would like to propose to you that all changes that have been brought upon us, and more are likely to come, had their origins in the pre-pandemic period, but the pandemic has opened the way to their more rapid adoption or to their more rapid proliferation owing to the nature of the disease. What were the trends before the pandemic? There were some global trends. For example, there was an erosion of global governance. No country or group of countries had any longer the capability or the capacity to drive politically or economically the global agenda. This was certainly not the case during the Cold War, when the Soviet bloc and the Western bloc together were able to shape to a large extent how the world was run and to determine what the agenda of the world would be. But now what we have seen is a global erosion or a gradual erosion of global governance. No country or group of countries can any longer set the agenda. Most countries are beginning to search for individual solutions to problems that could, in fact, best be solved by international cooperation. This trend is intensifying. Also, like if we go back, there was actually an emerging sort of highly competitive relationship between China and the United States. And the COVID conflict, the COVID pandemic has actually enforced this, but the Americans in particular were trying to draw others into this highly competitive game with China. Now, if you look at domestic policies, we have seen the rise of populist governments every place. They have challenged the established ruling elite. They have challenged the fundamentals of government, the way the governments are run. And parallel with the rise of authoritarianism is, or populism, is the rise of more authoritarian forms of government, or what used to be democracies becoming more authoritarian. So much so that we hear nowadays as to whether Mr. Trump would leave office if he lost it. I mean, this would be unthinkable, but we're talking about it. And then also this crisis, before the crisis, there was a rising wave of xenophobia, particularly promoted by the movement of large numbers of people, either from zones of conflict or from zones of deprivation. If you look at economic trends, if you look at, leave the global trends aside for a moment, what we see was that the global economy was actually slowing down before the virus struck. In the business world, an interesting change was beginning to take place. Profit maximization was being questioned. Even the beneficiaries of profit maximization, corporations and stockholders, were beginning to wonder whether other stakeholders should be incorporated into the picture such that they would also become beneficiaries of the prosperity that economic activity generated. And then, of course, one other important development, digitalization of life was slowly working its way into our lives. In fact, some companies were experimenting from working from home at least one day a week. Then, there were corporate boards and also committees holding virtual meetings in addition to in-person meetings. There was actually, excuse me for this. There was actually a change in the way we teach. For example, MOOCs, or massive open online courses, were becoming more and more popular. In fact, if I might put in the good word for IPSA, the International Political Science Association is offering a number of courses on the internet for interested people, and this is all entirely free. Then there was an expansion of internet banking and shopping. So then let's turn to the question, how did the pandemic affect all these things? If we turn to global politics, although it has become very evident that international cooperation is needed to fight the epidemic, in fact, the pandemic, although encouraging particularly some private cooperation with regard to the development of vaccine and etc., has actually led the governments to each tend to their own problems. And in fact, there is not much international cooperation. In fact, the reverse appears to be happening. For example, Mr. Trump has announced that he is no longer going to support the World Health Organization. So this go it alone trend is appearing to be continuing. In fact, COVID has become another ground for promoting this go it alone, and it has also become another ground for the other phenomenon I referred to. That is, the Americans in particular have taken the COVID as another resource with which they could challenge the Chinese as having sort of developed this virus and exported it to the world, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at domestic politics of societies, COVID has provided now an grounds for governments to collect much information about the private lives of citizens. And, it is now taken to be natural that the government should collect these data so that they can protect us. Governments have also become much more at ease in employing emergency powers, issuing decrees, that is, a rule by decrees rather than lawmaking. Uh, the role of law enforcement agencies have generally expanded. And my suspicion is that while these are prompted by the epidemic, these proclivities of basically collecting data about the private lives of citizens, using emergency powers, and the expansion of the role of law enforcement agencies will probably continue to remain as options to governments after the pandemic is totally gone. In other words, the pandemic will have served as grounds for legitimation of the expanding role of government and its intrusion into our private lives. But then we might basically interject a note of optimism uh, in the end. But before doing that, we should also note that the pandemic has prompted a rise in anti-immigrant and anti-minority feelings. And these are being into practice by countries introducing more severe restrictions for admitting people from other countries into their own. This is being uh, uh, again manifest in the reluctance of governments to grant asylum to those who need it, and also reluctance of government to accept immigrants in toto. Many national governments also, by way of conclusion, have displayed inaptness in running their own affairs. I mean, governments have proven to be often less competent than we imagine them to be. There is one note of optimism in all this. The role of local governments have expanded, and that also is probably with us to stay. If we look at the economic outcomes, there is certainly a reconsideration of the major policy principles of neoliberal economic order. Uh, the injection of large sums of money into the economy to avert business failures has basically annulled the principle of neoliberal economics that the market, in most cases, would be able to cure the ills that the operation of the economic system generates. I would propose that the state will assume additional responsibilities for coping with unemployment, healthcare, and eradication of poverty. Then there has been one other change. Reliance on few suppliers have proven to be risky, particularly since China seems to be a main supplier of things in a number of areas. It seems that there is now a trend for searching for other suppliers. So we may expect this trend to continue, that there will be a variation of suppliers. And there will also be an enhancement of the autarchical tendencies of governments in critical products, but this will bring with it the possibility that everybody that produces anything will bring in the argument that what they produce is an important item for national security. So finally, if we'll turn to other trends, digitalization, which I referred to, of course, will be with us. There will be greater use of home office arrangements. This may reduce the need for office space. This may reduce the need for transportation. This may reduce the need for workplace eating facilities. And this may also maybe affect how the cities operate. Then there will be a greater use of virtual meetings, conference and committee meetings, interviews. There will be reduced travel and therefore reduced tourism and hotel business. All businesses will rely more on the use of the internet. And education will become more digitalized, as I tried to suggest earlier. There will also be a maybe redefinition of the functions of the private corporation along the lines that I suggested earlier. Now, let me conclude. Long-term effects. We cannot actually predict the long-term effects of what the pandemic will bring us. It will depend on how long the pandemic will last and how fast recovery from it will be. But let me note that predictions of future developments have often been notoriously wrong. Let me just remind you that the most distinguished Sovietologists failed to predict the breakup of the Soviet Union 6 or 5 months before it all happened. So far be it from me to offer predictions, but let me note that I began by comparing the pandemic to a revolution. So let me conclude by a work on revolutions as well. Some of you may recall, again, this dated book called The Anatomy of Revolution by Crane Brinton. Crane Brinton argued that after the overthrow, there would initially be a rule of moderates, then there would be an accession of the extremists to power, and then the extremists would grow, and there would be what he called the Thermidor period, where the old and the new competed, and finally, there would be a restoration of some of what was the revolution was conducted against. So what does this tell us? Changes will probably that I described to you will become even more radical than I made that sound initially. But then there will be a period, there will come a period when the old and the new will compete, and we will end up with some sort of synthesis, for example, greater use of the internet in committee meetings and corporate business, but also a return of more frequent human meetings. Similarly, if you move to education, there will be a greater move to internet digital education. This is particularly important in light of the fact that higher education in particular has become more and more expensive over the years. But in the end, we will discover that we cannot totally do away with human interaction, but we have now an additional instrument which will enable us to conduct our interactions possibly more frequently over the internet. So this is what I had to say. Let me again thank you for the opportunity to have this talk so that I could share my ideas with you and meet at least some of you by talking with you and others simply as pictures on the computer screen. I send you my greetings and thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Turan, for this wonderful and thoughtful interpretation and presentation. And you touched many points from Cold War to from the current politics and governance and the issues. Thank you for being with us and thank you for this presentation. We have Suresh Prabhu sir with us, and sir has joined long back.
He's joined.
So, yeah, sir has joined. So, yeah. But before I invite Suresh Prabhu sir, I would like to invite Saraswati Vande ma'am, the Senior Research Fellow with Water Policy Center, to report on the proceedings of the last 2 days event very quickly in 5 to 7 minutes. So then we can hear Suresh Prabhu sir.
Sir, the minister is here, Minister. Mr. Suresh Prabhu is here. Has he
Yes, sir is here.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, he's here. So I can address him.
Just 1 minute.
Honorable Minister, Member of Parliament and former Cabinet Minister, Shri Suresh Prabhu, Professor Ilter Turan, past President, International Political Science Association, and Professor Emeritus, Istanbul Bilgi University, Principal Mary Vimochana, she may log in soon, and all the participants who were there at the conference, along with my colleagues at the Water Policy Center. It is my privilege to read the proceedings of the COVID-19 Dialogue, the virtual international conference organized jointly by the Water Policy Center, Aurangabad, India, the Venuganga Foundation, Aurangabad, India, the Yunus Center, Bangladesh, the NES Ratnam College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Mumbai, India on 24th and 25th of September 2020, titled COVID-19 Dialogue, Sectoral Impacts, Global Response and Enhancing Resilience to Future Pandemics, was attended by 74 participants from 27 countries covering 8 time zones. The stated objective of the dialogue was to provide a comprehensive picture of the long-term changes and opportunities to improve the state of the world, which it did, with a wide range of issues from the economy and health to education and culture dissected to study its impact. The next objective of analyzing the role of major stakeholders, the government, industry, civil society, and international organizations in mitigating the impact of the pandemic was also met with the participation of government officials, industrialists, and representatives from grassroots organizations who articulated their vision of a post-COVID era. Through the participation of policymakers, academicians, and political actors in this conference, we could strategize ways to rebuild communities and to design solutions to be better prepared for future global shocks. In his inaugural address, Professor Mohammed Yunus referred to a corona vacuum that has been created from which we need to rise and redesign our thinking process. So we can think of the pandemic as an opportunity and a challenge. He gave a clarion call for creating a new world with common interest as the ultimate goal for all processes and systems. In his keynote address, Professor Xavier Sharma spoke about the need to redesign education to make societies more resilient. He emphasized on the need to have blended teaching at all levels so that learners have exposure to independent learning supplemented by practical based syllabi to develop confidence and resilience in them. In the technical sessions that followed, the discussions in international relations range from the future of geopolitical relations, redefining security in the COVID and post-COVID era, geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific region, impact of COVID on the Rohingya camps in South Asia, to paradigm shifts in the post-COVID world order. The session on agriculture dealt with niche issues like cultivation of autumn rice during COVID-19, scope of artificial intelligence for efficient irrigation, water management, impact of COVID-19 on sustainable development goals to general issues like impact on agricultural workers, small and marginal farmers. The sessions on digitization, media, and online platforms dealt with the risk of accelerated digitalization amidst COVID-19 situation, gendering of mass surveillance, online misinformation and truth in the COVID era, challenges and lessons from coercive digitalization during COVID-19, changing behavior patterns through value signaling and message framing in the mass media, violation of digital rights during COVID-19, and the universal impact of exploding digital space during COVID-19. In the sessions on impact of COVID on language and social behavior, we had scholarly presentations on lockdown and challenges of law enforcement, neologism in English language during COVID-19 times, impact of COVID-19 on child protection regime and work-life balance for working women during COVID-19. The sessions on education saw discussions on higher education governance after COVID-19 crisis, challenges and opportunities from a Latin American perspective, and reimagining teacher training programs in the time of COVID-19. In the sessions on business, industry, and finance, the role of international tax reform in financing COVID-19 response, the global pharmaceutical industry's attempt to regain customer trust, the impact of COVID-19 on world trade, remote working practices in construction industry and other industries, business transformation before and after COVID-19, and the impact of COVID-19 on employment in micro, small, and medium enterprises, and attempts at resurgence were analyzed. The European Union and the ASEAN's response, that is the Asian community's response to COVID in the sessions on health, issues like global health diplomacy, inequalities in healthcare, augmenting ecological balance and health security through human activity, the merging of health and economics as an innovative poverty alleviation strategy, vaccine nationalism, vaccine diplomacy were all discussed. We, the organizers, are truly humbled by the response that we have had to the dialogue in our efforts to bring you all together in the fight against COVID-19. The participants have dedicated their ideas, their time, their resources in response to the virus. It has reminded us that we are all connected by our health and by our common humanity, and that we all have a role to play in building a healthier, more equitable future. We have to channel our capacities and energies towards building a better future for humanity in a post-COVID-19 world. Around the world, people everywhere are eager to resume their lives, spend time with friends and loved ones, and earn a decent wage. To make this a reality, we will need COVID-19 tests, treatments, vaccines available to everyone, everywhere. So no one is safe until everyone is safe. Thank you.
Sir, you are mute. Please unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry for that. Thank you, Dr. Saraswati Unni, for giving this detailed report of proceeding. And without extending further, now let me just introduce our chief guest, Sri Suresh Prabhu Sarji, and then I'll invite sir to speak on this give valedictory address. Sri Suresh Prabhu sir is a six-time member of Parliament and a former minister. He was formerly the Minister of Railways, Minister of Commerce and Industry and Civil Aviation. He represents India as India's Sherpa to G7, Group of 7 and Group of G20. He was the chairman of the prestigious task force on interlinking of river projects. He is a part of 16 global organizations and 9 strategic dialogues, which includes Global Water Partnership, World Economic Forum, United Nations Development Program, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, Asia Energy Forum, United Nations Committee of Biodiversity, World Federation of UNESCO, to name a few, and he has been named as one of among the top 3 Indian leaders by Asia Week magazine in its lead story, Giant on the Move. Sri Prabhu sir awarded India of the year 2017 and declared Best Member of Parliament in 13th Lok Sabha in April 2004 by Aaj Tak, the TV channel in India. Prabhu sir ranked as the second best performing minister in India today. India Today's report in 2001 on performance of the key minister of government of India. Before he entered the public life, he was practicing as a chartered accountant. He was the chairman of the state's largest cooperative bank, the Saraswat Bank. He was one of the first to push for digitalization in the banking sector. Due to his forward-looking policy making, he initiated the development of India's new industrial policy with focus on boosting sustainable manufacturing in India, and he always receptive to new ideas and appreciate constructive criticism while encouraging public and stakeholders' participation. Without extending this introduction, I warmly welcome Sri Suresh Prabhuji to deliver a valedictory address. Sir, floor to you. Suresh Prabhu, sir.
So good afternoon, friends. Actually, I was really looking forward to participate in this important forum because I don't think there is anything more important than water in the world. This sustains not just lives of people, but in a way, the life of the planet. There has been a lot of expeditions going on by many advanced countries in the world, including India, to discover the life on other planets. And what we are really looking for, amongst other things on this planet, is whether there is a water there. Because we know if you find water on some other faraway planet from here, that would be a clear indication that there is a life there. It's a different matter that the world community is not so much concerned about the water on this planet as much they are like to look out for a water on the other planet. That shows the importance of water. There are many countries, including right now, there's a geopolitical crisis which is brewing up in Africa when Ethiopia is trying to build a big dam, which is going to create possible issues for Egypt, Sudan, the Nile, which is one of the longest rivers in the world, is being shared by many countries in the world, in that particular part of the world, in Africa. And therefore, water assumes a great importance in all aspects of our lives. Cultural life, as most of the ancient civilization has survived thanks to the rivers. Or political lives, because you can maintain peace with the neighbors or within your country if you can provide water to all. It's also a very contentious issue, can snowball into a crisis if not handled properly. What is interesting is the water is a gift of nature. It's not a creation of human mind. Humans can consume it, enjoy it, but cannot create it. Technically they can, but not on the scale that we need. So the nature's biggest gift to humanity and to this planet to sustain the entire biological life is water. So we should not just thank the Almighty for giving us the water, but also manage it carefully, properly, judiciously, and try to ensure that water never becomes a source of an existential problem for the humanity, which might happen the way we are going. Very happy that all of you have debated on this issue for a long time. I wish I could have continued because I came exactly at 4:30. That's my problem, that I come right on time and would leave at 5 because there was some other program to attend. So I was waiting from 4:30 exactly, precisely. I had to go for other program because water is such a priority area for me as well that I wanted to participate and congratulate all of you. But water has many dimensions: environmental, social, political, cultural, but also technological. If you can work properly using, say, for example, geospatial technologies and map the water resource correctly, you can actually use it more efficiently. Barring few parts of the world, more or less, where there is more human habitation, there is a water problem. Africa has almost as many people as India has, more than 1.3 billion people. Of course, Africa's so many people are divided into 54 countries, whereas the same number of people in India are in one country. But it's most populous part of the world, Africa, India, China, are all facing water problems. This year, there are unprecedented floods in some part of the world, including China. And some of the reservoirs that we have created, like Three Gorges, the big dam that we have created on Yangtze River in China, for example, they're under serious threat because of too much of water. So the problem of water is not just less water, but too much water as well. So what is necessary is a management of water so that when nature gives us that bounty, how do you ensure that we use it in a more intelligent way? By using the best of technologies for both flood control and drought relief, but also for usage of water in a rightful manner. In India, for example, we have got only 4% of the fresh water of the world. And as I said earlier, almost 17% of the population of the world shares that water. So 4% is shared by such large population. Inevitably, there's a need for applying some prudential ideas. And some part of that water is available plenty in the basin like Brahmaputra. Whereas in Pennar Basin in India, same part of the country has hardly any water, less than 350 meters in per capita, whereas in Brahmaputra is more than 18,000 per capita. So this is a disproportionately dispersed water resources in the country. I'm glad that Professor was mentioning about different connotation of it. And I'm glad that Professor, you just gave a complete overview about what you debated and deliberated. I'm very happy that you discussed this aspect from all possible angles. The new dimension to water problem is going to be a climate change. Climate change would mean that water will be a serious threat to the humanity. Too much water and no water for a long time. Complete changing of pattern of when we get the precipitation. Some part of the world gets more water from melting of snow. Now we are seeing that glaciers melting means so much of water will flow into the water bodies like rivers or even oceans, because all rivers finally meet the oceans anyway. So that will result in sea level rise. But that's a short-term idea. So that's going to create huge problem for people living around the coast. But when the glaciers will go, after some time, the melting will not happen, and therefore the good part of the population will be suffering because the snow-fed water will not come. So climate change is a serious threat. Today we are seeing that in California on the west coast, there are forest fires blazing even today. Amazon is burning. in Southern America. So this is North America, this is South America. In India, we have seen floods coming. And floods and drought syndrome is very common to India. So water can create havoc at the same time by having too much or no water at all. So addressing these challenges is going to require huge skills, technological, social, political, also some economic inputs. We can use some economic instrument to manage scarce water resources. We can look into water as a necessity for not just sustaining lives of people like you and me, but also of the entire biodiversity of the world. Without water, the biological life will just disappear. And to provide water even for that, because biodiversity has no voice like you and me. The people can fight for their water rights, but biodiversity unfortunately has no voting right or no speaking power. And therefore, it's in our own interest that we must keep that interest in mind of ensuring that water is also provided for a much needed and most important aspect of biological life is the biodiversity of the world. We have lost good part of biodiversity in the world already. That's not because of lack of water resources alone, but because of completely careless attitude towards biodiversity. And now in future, we'll have to maintain it properly for our own good and for maintaining the ecological balance. So I think water has many dimensions. Agriculture, for example, food security of the world is so critical for our survival like water. And we cannot get food security unless we produce agriculture. And we cannot produce agriculture without water. In fact, in India, more than 83-84% of the water is used for agriculture. We don't realize it. So agriculture, the cropping pattern are all related to water issues. We should not ignore the importance of cropping pattern because wrong cropping pattern can result into more absurd use of water resources. So we have to work on all the issues comprehensively and in a very sensible manner, which I think will help us to address the issues. So let me congratulate the organizer once again for bringing together a very committed group of people, like-minded, I can call them water warriors, to talk about such issues and make sure. I will just end my speech by saying, to address the issue, I already started a campaign called Nisarga Rakshak. Warriors will take upon themselves the responsibility of working on water issues. And why we call them Nisarga? Because you cannot have water without nature. We cannot have water without land. Where are the water bodies finally store the water on the land? So relationship between land, water, relationship between water and forest, relationship between water and biodiversity, the inseparable relationship between water, social, cultural, political issues, all that has to be dealt together. And therefore, I am very happy that we are launching this campaign. I am sure all of you will also join in this very important movement of people themselves working towards saving the water resources of the country and eventually of the world. I'm very happy that a very respected dear friend from Turkey, professor who talked so passionately about it. And Turkey has a very unique situation. It's a very large, beautiful country. And it's in two continents. They are also in Asia. Actually, one city in Turkey is in two continents. And therefore, it's a bridge. I will call it is between the two continents, but also probably, as Professor was speaking, I was listening to him and saying to myself that probably, like Istanbul, is a link between Asia and Europe. Can we see that, Professor, you could be the link between, on one side, a disaster that we're heading for if we don't address the water problem properly, or prosperity if we deal with water problems in more sensible way. And I hope we succeed in addressing it properly. Your guidance and those of all of your participation into this very interesting program will finally help us to address the water problem in such a way that we succeed rather than fail and move towards a better lives for all of us. So congratulations once again. As I said, I had earmarked half an hour for you, and I was there at 4:30 sharp. And unfortunately, I couldn't participate earlier. But of course, I benefited from your interesting inputs. Since they're all waiting for me for other program, I don't want to be keeping them in waiting. So I will leave you. But thank you very, very much. And please count on my full support for this endeavor of working together to realize the water problem. Thank you very much. And I'm really, really happy that you have taken this very important step forward to work on such a important, but at the same time complex issues, so that we can work and succeed in this. So let me once again thank the Professor Turan for giving this interesting idea. I also thank Professor Senior Research Fellow Saraswati Unni for bringing these interesting ideas. Actually, we have lost a river, Saraswati, and we don't know where it has gone. But I'm glad that Saraswati Unni is here. So I think what we have lost cannot be recreated, but at least I'm sure the Saraswati Unni will be the custodian of knowledge and ideas to take and ensure that no more rivers will become extinct like the river Saraswati. I hope that happens. And to do that, we'll work together. I'm very happy that Rao Sahib Bavaskar, the director of this center in Aurangabad, he invited me, and actually I could participate into this. I think, Professor, the director of the institute, Rao Sahib, I can promise you, whenever you need me, I'll be available to participate in your programs so that we can work together as partners, as co-parceners. You know, there is a concept of HUF in which there's a joint family property which is divided among family members who are called co-parceners. So water is a joint family property belonging to all the citizens of the world. And each one of us have a right to protect it, but also enjoy it. But how can you enjoy it if you don't protect it? How can you not ensure that we keep it clean? Also, I couldn't add so many other dimensions of water issues. Quality of water, the diseases that happen because of water. I didn't discuss about the sharing of water. There are so many dimensions to it. I wish I had more time to talk about it, but I think one day we'll do that. And once again, thank you for bringing me into this very interesting conversation. Thank you very much. All the best to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful ideas and this support that you promised to us. Thank you very much for being with us and speaking for almost 25 minutes. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Thank Ilsa Turan, sir, before he leaves.
Yes. Dr. Mary Madam, are you there?
Angita can.
Hello.
This you can do it.
No,
Angita is there.
No, ma'am is there. Ma'am is there. Mary ma'am.
Which madam? Mary madam.
Unmute.
Yeah, Mary ma'am. Yes.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
Just look for Turan, Professor Turan. Is he there? Has he left?
Oh, he's there. He's there.
I think he has left.
He has left.
Okay.
He has left.
Yeah. Mary ma'am, floor is to you.
Yes.
last part of the event and session.
Can you introduce Mary ma'am, please? There are many people who don't know.
No. Shall I start?
Just Aruna.
Yeah, let me introduce. Let me introduce. We have Dr. Mary Vimochana, the principal of NES Ratnam College. Ratnam College, which is very prestigious college in Mumbai University, affiliated to Mumbai University and located in Bhandup, Mumbai. Professor Mary is economist by profession and by academic background. She has written many articles on economy and particularly on the environmental economy, and she is writing continuously in newspaper as well as research papers. And since last few years now, she has taken the charge of administrator of the College of Indian Satnam. And Professor Mary, she is well known for the economical ideas, particularly in terms of environmental economics and the grassroots economics, where she has written. And at the same time, she is well known and well in administrating the institutions where she is heading this institution. So now let me call Dr. Mary Muchana to propose vote of thanks, the last part of the session. Madam.
Good evening, everyone. I take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to the Water Policy Center, UNES Center, Mumbai School of Thought, Venuganga Foundation for collaborating with NES Ratnam College of Arts, Science and Commerce in the conduct of this two-day global conference held on 24th September 2020 and 25th September 2020 on the topic WPC COVID-19 Dialogue, Sectoral Impacts, Global Responses, and Enhancing Resilience to the Future Pandemics. As the world today is facing the worst effects of the pandemic, this conference explored the avenues spread all over diverse spheres of activities, focusing more on higher education and other allied fields. It has brought in the unconventional and unique importance of the disaster. I take this opportunity to thank the Nobel laureate, Professor Muhammad Yunus, of Grameen Bank, founder of the Microcredit Initiative for the Poor, Professor K.V.S. Sharma, Vice Chancellor, Maharashtra National University, for his keynote address. Thanks are due to Dr. Varadarajan, founder president of NES SVB Group, for his guidance and support for conduct of such activities by NES Ratnam College. I thank Mr. Suresh Prabhu, MP, Honorable Founder, former Union Minister of Commerce, Finance and Railways, Member of Rajya Sabha, and India's Sherpa to G20. Professor Ilter Turan, Professor Emeritus, Istanbul Bilgi University, Turkey, past president of the International Political Science Association, for having graced the occasion and for making it so special. Thanks are due to Mr. Rao Bavaska, Director of Water Policy Center, for taking such an initiative to make the world to know about the importance of conserving water resources. Dr. Saraswati Vunni, Research Fellow and Program Director, Water Policy Center, for taking uh, minute interest in all the program schedule, preparing schedule and coordinating with all the resource person and other. And the noted chairpersons from different fields who ensured that each session was systematically carried out. Thanks to the rapporteurs and the volunteers of the program, Ms. Aruna Shinde, Mr. Milind Bavaska, President Venuganga Foundation, and special thanks to the participants from various countries and all my dear students from different colleges. I thank you once again for this 2 days participating in 2 days seminar, and really I hope you have benefited from this. Thank you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for being with us. In addition, let me just continue this vote of thanks for just few seconds, and let me mention the volunteers who joined this event from Ratnam College, Gita Patwa, from this Shaileja Jha, Royston D'Souza, Kavita Savalgi, Sri Lakshmi, Surbi Jain. From Vajay College, who joined this young students joined from Vajay College. Vasudha Moria, Nilja Jayade, Tanmay Patil, Amruta Srirangam, Sanjay